and welcome to another show. Well, as we commemorate the 49th anniversary of Roe versus Wade on January 22nd, abortion access is at stake like never before, with the Supreme Court expected to weigh in on a key case later this year that could decimate the ability to get abortion care. Still, even with Roe in place for decades, anti-choice politicians have passed state laws and created obstacles that have pushed abortion care out of reach for far too many. In response, Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity, URGE, is working to strategize and build power to ensure that abortion care remains affordable and available, not just legal for everyone who needs it, especially those who bear the brunt of abortion restrictions, including people of color, young people, and those working to make ends meet. I was fortunate to get hold of URGE Executive Director Kimberly Inez McGuire, and she's my guest on this episode to discuss how, on this Roe anniversary and beyond, the organization is helping build a future where people can get abortion care when they need it. So, welcome, Kimberly.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to start off with this, because believe it or not, I asked somebody the other day and they didn't have a clue. What is the significance of Roe versus Wade?
That's a great question. And a lot of people don't know, so that's not necessarily a surprise. So 49 years ago, the Supreme Court upheld abortion rights in Roe v. Wade, basically saying that abortion is legal and a constitutional right in all 50 states. And I wish I could tell you that was the end of the story. Unfortunately, after that decision, state politicians started to figure out all sorts of ways, as you mentioned in your introduction, to start to strip away at that right, to start to tear away, right, piece by piece by piece. And so we find ourselves in a situation where it is true today that Roe is the law of the land, that abortion is technically legal in every state, but it's absolutely not true that abortion is accessible. We see this in a state like Texas, where they passed a law creating vigilantes out of people's neighbors and really making abortion completely inaccessible across this huge state. And so we're in this strange moment where, on the one hand, Roe v. Wade means abortion is technically legal, but if you actually need an abortion, it can be really hard or even impossible to get that care.
So what barriers to abortion exist, even with Roe versus Wade in place?
Great question. So if you can believe it, since 2010 alone, so we're talking 12 years, state legislatures have passed more than 500 new laws making abortion hard to get. And these laws do all sorts of things. They ban abortion coverage, which means that your health insurance won't cover abortion care, and you have to pay for it out of pocket, which can be prohibitively expensive. Some of these laws create unnecessary requirements, like forcing people to go to the clinic multiple times, forcing people to actually delay their care and wait longer than they would want to. In other cases, these are laws which are designed to shut down clinics, so creating all sorts of restrictions and limits and requirements on clinics. They even force doctors to read scripts to patients that are full of lies and abortion stigma. And so all of these laws, literally hundreds of them, are intended to shut down clinics, to shame and stigmatize people who need abortion, and basically to make it, difficult, unaffordable, or impossible to get an abortion.
So, well, the obvious, what happens if Roe versus Wade is overturned?
Yeah, that is the question. And, unfortunately, it is what we are expecting to happen, right? We have a Supreme Court with 3 appointees that were put there by Trump to overturn Roe, right? So this has been kind of a long time coming. So what happens is that half of the country is poised to make abortion illegal if Roe v. Wade is struck down. So that means they already have laws on the books that say as soon as Roe v. Wade is gone, abortion is a crime in this state. And what that means then is that people who live in those states have very few options, right? They might be forced to carry a pregnancy that they don't want to carry. They might be forced to leave the state, travel hundreds of miles. These are not tenable choices, particularly for working folks, for low-income folks. These are incredibly difficult choices. And in the other half of the country, where abortion will remain legal, those states are going to be overwhelmed, right? Because those clinics are going to be trying to serve people from all across the country. This is actually already happening now, where Texans, because abortion is essentially inaccessible in Texas, they're going as far as Kansas or even Maryland to get their abortion. So just imagine half of the country with no access. The other half is going to be struggling to fill the gap.
I tell you what, I want to throw a question to you out of left field, if I may, all right? Because,
sure.
I saw something the other night with people hounding people going into clinics and this and that. Let's just say straight out, if I was to ask you, in your opinion, honestly, okay, what are all the reasons why a woman should be allowed to have an abortion?
As someone who became a mom just a couple of months ago, I went through the experience of carrying a baby for 40 weeks, of giving birth, many sleepless nights since then. And it's something that I chose, right? I chose to become a mom, and it's hard, but I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, for me, any reason is the right reason. The reason, that somebody has to get an abortion, if it's just that they don't want to be pregnant, whatever their reason is, that's good enough for me, because I can't imagine forcing someone else to go through that experience of staying pregnant, of giving birth, if it's not something that they chose.
I mean, it is such a contentious issue, isn't it? It's very, very difficult in a lot of ways, but okay, you make that clear, that's sensible, and of course there's always the health issue, which is often forgot. There's always the issues of rapes. There's all sorts of things, and I just don't understand why, these are not taken into consideration when the hammer comes down and they just say, no, not on for anybody. I mean, look, let me ask you this. What are you doing to mobilize individuals then?
Great question. So the good news is that even though we have really, a minority of politicians that want to take this right away, most people in this country actually think abortion should be legal and accessible. And that's something that, we don't necessarily talk about as much as we should, that, most people in this country are actually think abortion should be legal. And so what we're doing at URGE is we are organizing and mobilizing young people, particularly in the South and the Midwest, because we know it's the South and the Midwest that are going to face some of the hardest restrictions on abortion and outright bans if Roe v. Wade falls. And so those young people are speaking out loud and proud. They're saying, you know what? Being able to get an abortion is a good thing. We're abortion positive. They're also talking to their state legislatures. We're actually organizing young people right now in 5 states to go to their state legislatures and say, in this state, abortion must remain legal. And finally, those young people are voting. They are getting other young people engaged in the process. They are voting in local elections, in state elections, in federal elections, because we know, especially if Roe v. Wade falls, abortion access is going to become an issue of local and state policy. But the good news is young people are engaged, they're voting, and they're taking action.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head right there, because, these young ones don't stay young forever. And, it makes a big difference. So, I mean, Unite for Reproductive and Gender Equity. I mean, it's a state-driven national organization. It builds power and sustains the young people's movement for reproductive justice. And it centers the leadership of young people, the color of women. And we're talking now also queer, trans, non-binary, and people of low income. You're a stalwart. You've built a solid reputation as a national expert on abortion access and a prominent spokesperson on reproductive justice and public policy. And you have been featured, and I'm referring to Kimberly Inez McGuire, ladies and gentlemen. She's been featured on the Washington Post, NBC Latino, Fox News Latino, Color Lines, Think Progress, many, many, many others, and right here on The Mark Bishop Show. Now, if anybody is listening to this and says, you know what, maybe I want to get, a little bit more involved here, what should I do for the best information? Where should I go?
Absolutely. So you can learn more about URGE at urge.org. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at URGE, URGE_org. And finally, if you want to learn more about this issue and actually hear from some of the young people who are mobilizing on it, you can attend our Round. And you can RSVP for that by going to bit.ly, that's bit.ly/Roe Roundtable. That's ROE Roundtable. And at that event, you'll get to hear from young people who lived with the Roe v. Wade as a reality their whole lives, but also recognize that Roe is not enough, and it was never enough. We actually need real, comprehensive access to all the reproductive health care that we need.
Mm-hmm. Healthcare is one big thing. What about this side of the story, Kimberly? For young, for parents listening with young teenage daughters, the message is, me growing up in my era, a little bit different, I got to admit. But, the attitude of, look, I can just have sex. It doesn't matter. If I get pregnant, I'll go have an abortion. That was not the right attitude. And don't you think there should be more education on sex safety and sex carefulness? Don't you think that would help the whole issue?
When I think about what do young people need to be healthy and thrive, young people absolutely need comprehensive, shame-free sex education so that they have all the information about what their options are, right? And if young people decide to have sex, they should have access to condoms. They should have access to birth control, right? Again, the full information, the full access to healthcare. We know that when young people have access to comprehensive, medically based information, they're able to make healthy decisions, right? And it's actually when young people are forced into silence or shame, that it's a lot harder to make healthy decisions, right? And so what we're trying to build is a world where every young person has access to the information that they need to make decisions about their bodies, about their health, about, parenting, sexuality, all of it, right? The same decisions that all of us make. Again, for me, I think about, my own journey to become a mom. And I'm really fortunate that I was able to prevent pregnancy when I wasn't ready. And then I was able to become pregnant when that's what I was ready to do. And we just want the same for every person, right? That they're able to make their decisions and get the health care they need.
Yeah, when you put it like that, What's happening on January 22nd? Anything big planned?
Well, we're going to see all sorts of action across the country. So we're seeing young people speaking out to their state legislatures. We're seeing really dynamic conversations on social media, people sharing their abortion stories. And also we're seeing a lot of lawmakers in conversation with their constituents because there are things, even at a federal level, that can happen. So, for example, the Women's Health Protection Act is a federal piece of legislation that, it's made some progress in the House and the Senate. So folks can also reach out to their members of Congress and their senators to say, hey, you know what, let's move forward the Women's Health Protection Act. That would create another opportunity to protect abortion access. So I think what you'll see is a lot of conversation, a lot of action, and really, another reminder that most people in this country want abortion to be legal. We may not have all the same feelings on abortion. Some people may have really strong feelings, but at the end of the day, even if it's not the right decision for them, most people think this decision should be available to those who need it.
Right. Very well put. Well, good luck on the 22nd, and thank you for taking some time out. Ladies and gentlemen, the national expert, Kimberly Inez McGuire, explaining what is needed to secure abortion access nationwide and access to abortion care in 2022. And, of course, the 22nd, coming up in a couple of days, marks the 49th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. Thank you, Kimberly, for taking time out. Appreciate having you here on the Mark Bishop Show, and good luck on the 22nd.
Thank you so much. We'll be in the streets.